Alright, we back with Goku and DC Season 4, Episode 14. In this episode, Flash battles one of the androids. Alright? I don't know why. I put Jiro there, but it's because Jiro, he's the maker. But we already know it's Android Slade brought back. Anyway, so shout out to the members, man. Shout out to Jason, 57835, John Lane, 2016, OD Demon Wolf 34, and Quade Moke, man. I appreciate the members, man. It helps me increase the value of this channel, what I can do for this channel. And whenever we get 10 members, I plan on adding voices to certain characters. So that's a start there for a goal. So anyways, let's get into it. The crimson glow of the hellscape painted everything in shades of violence and despair. In the ruins of a city park, now overrun with gnarled demonic flora, Beast Boy landed in a crouch amidst the twitching bodies of three of Piccolo's clan spawn. Their bladed limbs were still. Their smoldering red eyes were now dark. He'd taken them down, not as an earthly animal, but as something new, something he just copied, which was them. He looked down at his own hand, still shimmering with residual green energy as he was shaping back. A slow, fierce grin spread across his face as he flexed a hand, watching the bone blade retract and reshape back into fingers. The old templates, Earth's animals, were powerful and they were familiar, but these things, they were a fresh palate, a challenge his power had been craving without him even knowing it. Huh, he murmured to the dead spawn, his voice a low rumble. He stood up, rolling his shoulders, feeling the phantom memory of the new form's potential humming in his cells. He looked toward the epicenter of the corruption, where the air throbbed with ancient evil power. Looks like the devil's giving me some new suits to wear. The ruined streets of Central City echoed with the chittering growls of Piccolo's demon spawn. Beast Boy moved through the shadows of a collapsed office building, his green eyes scanning the pack of a dozen creatures tearing through debris ahead. He tensed, ready to shift into one of his newly acquired demonic forms, with their bone blades and tough skins itching in his muscle memory, when a shriek cut through the chaos. I can't do the scream, but it wasn't a scream of fear, but a weaponized shriek of pure concussive force. The air rippled visibly. Storefront windows, still miraculously intact, shattered in unison. The spawns froze mid-scramble, their skull-like heads snapping toward the source in an instant before the sonic wave hit them like an invisible freight train. They were lifted off their feet and hurled backward into a pile of rubble, with bones audibly cracking. Beast Boy flinched, covering his own ears as the residual vibration buzzed in his teeth. Through the settling dust, a figure stepped into the hellish crimson light. She was a blonde woman, clad in form-fitting black leather and a jacket, a stark silhouette against the ruins. She didn't look like a metahuman, per se. No flashy costume, no glowing aura, just a fierce, focused intensity in her blue eyes as she surveyed her handiwork. One of the spawn twitched, trying to rise, and she delivered a sharp, precise kick to its head, making a sickening crack sound. "Stay down," she muttered, her voice husky but calm. Beast Boy stared, momentarily thrown. This wasn't a leaguer that he recognized, and there was no cape and no symbol. But the way she moved, economical, lethal, and utterly unshaken by the monstrous foes, spoke of a seasoned fighter. She turned her gaze, sweeping the area, and landed on him. Her eyes narrowed slightly, assessing. "Are you lost, kid?" she called out, not unkindly, but with a no-nonsense edge. No. I'm just handling things myself," Beast Boy replied, straightening up, his earlier bravado tempered by the display of brutal efficiency. "I already handled this block," she stated, gesturing with her chin toward the silent spawn. "I've got this sector. Checkpoint setting up 3 blocks east by the old cathedral. Civilians are being funneled there." Her eyes flicked over his green skin, his unusual appearance registering but not giving her pause. "But you look like you can fight. The city could use the help." It was a dismissal and direction all in one. Beast Boy gave a short, sharp nod. Yes, she was right. This area was secure, and she clearly didn't need any backup from him. The distant sounds of battle and screams from other parts of the city tugged at him. His new forms needed a real test, something of a bigger stage. "Got it," he said with a final glance at the formidable blonde. Then he melted back into the shadows, his form shimmering and shifting into a large, shadow wing-like creature. a blend of a blend of a bird and something more infernal, before launching himself into the crimson sky, heading toward the next fray. Black Canary watched him go for a second, with a faint, grim smile touching her lips, before turning to secure the perimeter. One less thing to worry about. Also, by the way, I think I finally found my animation for this series, man. I like this animation a lot. Might be using this for. Let me know what y'all think. Anyway, the world was a smear of color and terror, but for Barry Allen, it was a complex, high stakes chess game played at 1,000 moves per second. He was a crimson blur, a phantom of motion weaving through the ruined plaza. Deathstroke's traps weren't physical obstacles he could simply outrun. They were like temporal puzzles, pressure plates, keyed to kinetic energy rather than weight. They were buried under some dust, trip wires here, a delayed energy mine there. Each one was designed to catch not just a fast man, but the patterns of a fast man. But Barry danced through them all. He dashed toward a collapsed newsstand, only to vibrate his molecules to intelligibility a nanosecond before a net, crackling with red energy, snapped closed. He faint left, his afterimage baiting a hail of monomolecular flechettes from a hidden launcher, which his self delivered a volley of vibrating sonic boom jabs to Deathstroke's armored side from the right. Thwack. The impacts were like hitting a bank vault, but they did register. Each strike was a data point, a test. Barry wasn't trying to knock Slade out. He was probing. On the receiving end, Deathstroke was barely flinching. His single crimson lens word tracking not Barry's current position, but the ghosts of his movements, the statistical cloud of his most probable paths. Every dodge, every feint, every relatory punch was logged, analyzed, and fed into a predictive algorithm. The pain was irrelevant data. The fact that the speedster's third consecutive left side jab was 0.2 seconds slower than the first two was valuable information. He was utilizing Dr. Giroux's data on how to surpass metahumans through data entries. He took another stinging blow to the helmet, the vibration ringing his bell. Inside the armor, a cool digital readout flickered. A thin, invisible smile spread behind the mask. Let the speedster think he was winning the skirmish. Every second he spent reacting and attacking and surviving was another line of code in the program that would very soon tell Deathstroke exactly where he would be before he decided to be there, or how to spring the right trap. So the traps weren't meant to catch him now. They were being built, one countermeasure at a time, inside the mercenary's upgraded mind. The crimson and gold streak was a blur of controlled chaos, a dance around death. Barry Allen, the Flash, circled Deathstroke, a living storm of afterimages and supersonic feints. He saw the slight twitch in the mercenary's shoulder, a tail for a projectile throw. Predictable, Barry thought. Already adjusting his vibrational frequency as Deathstroke's arm snapped forward, a fan of razor-edged shurikens slicing through the air. Barry simply stepped through them. His molecules vibrated at a precise pitch, letting the cold metal pass harmlessly through his chest as if he were a ghost. He emerged in front of Slade, with his fist pulled back for a vibrating counterpunch, a smirk playing on his lips. "You'll have to do better than that," he began. But Deathstroke didn't turn. His free hand tapped a control on his armored gauntlet. Click. A magnetic pulse emanated from the thrown shuriken still hovering in the air behind Barry. Instantly, a powerful localized magnetic field turned to the alloy of the blades it activated, and they didn't just drop, they were pulled in a reverse course with violent snapping force, becoming like homing missiles. Barry's speed was irrelevant because his perception was forward and his momentum was committed. He felt more than saw currently the searing lines of fire, he felt more than saw the searing lines of fire that were across his back and calves as he stormed before with a gasp. The world tilting, crimson fabric tearing to reveal shadow stinging cuts. Before he could recover, Deathstroke's voice cut through the ringing in his ears, calm and dripping with contempt, as a single red lens seeming to bore into Barry's shocked expression. "You rely on your speed like a crutch, Allen," Slade stated, his tone that of a lecturer correcting a slow student. "You think velocity replaces strategy. You phase through the obvious threat, but you forget the battlefield isn't just in front of you. Even a speedster doesn't have eyes in the back of his own head. Your greatest gift makes you quite predictable. You always move forward when you attack me. You never consider what you've already left behind. The words landed harder than the shuriken. Barry clutched his side, the stinging wounds a physical testament to the truth. He'd been outmaneuvered not in speed, but in thought. Deathstroke hadn't just thrown weapons, he'd sown a minefield in his wake. Knowing Barry would never look back because he was so confident in his own abilities. Barry Allen ignored the searing lines of fire across his back and other parts of his body. Pain was a signal he'd learned to process. At super speed, compartmentalizing it into a dull throb at the edge of his awareness. Adrenaline and the speed force flooded his system, sharpening the world to a crystal clarity. The crimson rubble, the swirling ash, and Deathstroke's looming form, all of it snapped into a hyper-focused tableau. You talk too much, Barry said, his voice a low vibrato from the vibrating molecules. How about we see if your new processors can keep up when I stop pulling these punches? He didn't wait for a reply. He became pure motion. His feet became a blur of a deafening hum building in the air. He didn't run in a line. He began to circle Deathstroke at an impossible velocity, a crimson and gold orbit tightening with each nanosecond. The air itself became a weapon, pulled into a raging miniature tornado. Dust, debris, and the hellish red light were sucked into the vortex, a roaring cylinder of force with Deathstroke at its dead calm center. Inside the storm, Barry Allen attacked. He was everywhere and nowhere. A vibrating jab to the kidney from the left, a sonic boom kick to the back of the knee from the right, a precision strike to the joint of the armor's neck seal from directly behind. He moved in a staccato rhythm of impossible fast apparitions, a barrage of blows delivered from every conceivable angle at once. The thwip-thwack crack of impacts was a continuous machine gun staccato of punches against Deathstroke's armor. The mercenary systems were being overloaded currently. Predictive algorithms were just scrambling, trying to chart a path through the storm that had no pattern. It was only overwhelming speed. His armor whirred and sparked under the assault. He managed to block a strike, aimed for his lens, but two more hammered into his ribs in the same microsecond. Barry saw the opening, a slight staggering dip in Deathstroke's posture. He poured on the speed, the tornado shrieking to a new octave, and he materialized directly in front of Slade, who was still turning to meet ghosts from behind. Barry dropped low, coiling every ounce of kinetic energy into his legs. The words seemed to freeze for a single stretched second. This fast enough for you? Barry's voice was a whisper, lost in the tornado's roar, and then he unleashed it. A single, perfectly vertical uppercut propelled by the momentum of 100 prior strikes and the power of the speed force. And his fist vibrating at matter disrupted frequency connected squarely under Deathstroke's jaw. The sound was like a cathedral bell being smashed. The punch didn't just lift Deathstroke, it launched him. He rocketed up and out of the dissipating tornado, a black and orange projectile of trailing sparks. He soared across the ruined plaza in a flat, helpless arc before crashing through the weakened facade of a half-colisted bank. A cascade of broken masonry, twisted rebar, and glass followed him down, burying him in a thunderous crash of stone and metal. The tornado dissipated, leaving only settling dust and a fading ring of impact in the air. Barry stood panting in the sudden silence, his fist still clenched, staring at the fresh pile of rubble. The silence after the bank's collapse was absolute, broken only by the patter of falling dust. Barry Allen stood amidst the ruined chest, heaving. A fierce, triumphant grin spreading across his face. Hell yeah. He'd broken through the armor, the predictions, the code calculus. For a glorious fleeting second, the old rush of victory, clean and bright, flooded back into his memories. The grin vanished, however, and it was wiped away by the sound of shifting stone. A single armored hand erupted from the rubble pile, scattering debris. Then another. With a slow, deliberate, and utterly unhurried motion, Deathstroke pushed himself free. Chunks of concrete slid from his shoulders as he rose to his full height. His armor was scuffed, one pauldron was cracked, but his stance was steady. That single baleful crimson lens fixed on Barry, unblinking. A low, distorted chuckle emanated from his helmet's vocoder. It was dry, like a humorless sound. You even celebrate too fast, Alan, Deathstroke stated, his voice a gravelly monotone that cut through the settling quiet. He brushed a final piece of plaster from his chest plate with a dismissive flick. The fight's not over until the contract is complete. A lesson you heroes never seem to learn. He took a slow, measured step, his head tilting. Honestly, I almost feel sorry for the women in your life, he continued, the dark chuckle returning, laced with insinuation. If you're this premature in everything you do. The crude jab was meant to enrage and to disrupt focus, but before Barry could formulate a scathing retort, Deathstroke's movement was a blur of pure pragmatic violence. His hand didn't go for a sword on his back or like a staff. It went to his thigh and came up holding a compact, matte black submachine gun, a weapon that seemed laughable and mundane amidst their powerful clash. Barry's eyes widened, not in fear of the bullets, but in confusion at the tactic. A gun? Now? Is he getting this desperate? Barry Allen became a blur of crimson and gold as Deathstroke's trigger pull was met with nothing but empty air and fading after images. The hail of bullets tore through the brick and glass where Barry had been a nanosecond before, but the flash was already a ghost in the storm. In the time it took for the first shell casing to hit the ground, Barry had completed a full circuit around Slade. He zipped in, his hands a vibrating storm of precision. The cold metal of the submachine gun was in his grasp, then a dozen of disassembled pieces clattering to the rubble. At Deathstroke's feet, barrel, receiver, bolt, spring, all nearly separated before the mercenary's finger could even fully release the trigger. Barry skidded to a halt a few yards away, holding the empty magazine between two fingers with a look of patronizing pity. You really need to work on your aim, Slade. Or your budgeting. I just saved you a fortune in wasted ammunition. Deathstroke didn't look at the pieces of his weapon. His single red lens remained fixed on Barry, and from behind the mask came the same dry, humorless chuckle. It was a sound that froze the triumph in Barry's own chest. The pieces of disassembled gun lay scattered harmless. Barry's smirk was still on his lips, a trophy of his speed. Then he heard it. That dry, chilling chuckle from Deathstroke's vocoder. Ammunition cost is negligible, Slade stated, his voice flat. Efficiency is really what's paramount. His armor glove glow on his wrist. A low hum at first imperceptible, then vibrated through the rubble. Then it spiked into a deafening, discordant shriek, a sonic-like frequency that resonated from a dozen points all at once. Barry clutched his head. His vision swimming. The world didn't just get loud, it got wrong. Like his equilibrium was finally tuned to the speed's vibration, but it was being violently scrambled. It felt like his inner ear was full of angry hornets. He stumbled, the world tilting on its axis. While dodging the bullets, he played right into the trap. Embedded within the walls and the pillars, the very rubble around him were the actual payloads, because the bullets he'd so effortlessly avoided weren't standard rounds. Those casings were microscopic sonic emitters designed to anchor themselves upon impact and wait for a remote signal. Deathstroke watched, a statue of calculated victory, as the flash wreathed on the ground, incapacitated not by a blow he couldn't see, but by the invisible ring and aftermath of a harsh frequency. The sonic waves reached a crescendo, a wall of pure disorientation, holding the fastest man alive utterly and helplessly still for the moment. The sonic shriek was a cage of pure agony. Barry writhed on the broken asphalt, every nerve screaming in discord. The world was a nauseating smear of crimson light and vibrating rubble. Through the torment, he saw the silhouette resolve. Deathstroke moving with methodical calm. The mercenary's armored boots crunched on debris as he closed the distance. In his hand was the polished edge of a sword. He caught the hellish glow of a sliver of cold final light. Barry tried to vibrate and phase, to do anything, but the sonic frequency had hijacked his control, it seemed, like it was custom made for him. His powers were a roaring static in his ears and his unusable. He was just a man pinned by invisible like thorns, but in reality it was sound waves. Deathstroke loomed over him, the single crimson lens impassive. The sword rose, point aimed unerringly at Barry's chest. Let's run the final test, shall we, Alan? Slade's voice filtered through the ringing, devoid of triumph, only clinical finality. Empirical data. Let's see if you're truly faster than the Grim Reaper himself. The blade thrust forward, a clean, efficient killing motion. Time didn't slow. There was no last burst of speed. Barry saw the point coming. And a terrible, inevitable conclusion written in steel. A final, bitter thought flashed. Iris. Before he squeezed his eyes shut. Bracing for the searing cold, the end, he'd finally, irrevocably lost. The killing thrust never landed, though. A thick, ropey mass of emerald muscles, a tentacle tipped with vicious edge, slammed into Deathstroke's side with the force of a wrecking ball. The impact wasn't concisiveness, it was raw, bestial power. Slade was ripped from his feet and hurled sideways, his sword spinning from his grip to clatter against the rubble. Simultaneously, more of the prehensile green limbs shot out with a predatory precision. They weren't aiming at Slade. They targeted the rubble itself. The specific points where the sonic emitters were buried with brutal crushing force. The tentacles pulverized brick, concrete, and metal, grinding the embedded devices into silent, sparkling dust, canceling the sound emissions. The deliberating sonic shriek cut off instantly, replaced by a ringing, blessed silence. Barry gasped, the terrible pressure vanishing. He rode onto his side, his vision clearing to see his savior. Deathstroke recovered with a combat roll, coming to a crouch, his crimson lens whirred, focusing past the flash to the new figure standing at the edge of the plaza. It wasn't a leaguer. It was a hulking Beast Boy. Beast Boy had copied the image of a movie creature from something called Deep Rising. But he was still shifting back to his human form, and his face was one of pure anger, with the intent of revenge. Beast Boy, but not the kid he remembered from his Titan days. This was a harder, colder, a hunter, not a hero. Deathstroke slowly rose to his full height, his head tilting in a gesture of cold, analytical surprise. The dry chuckle returned, laced now with a fresh layer of contempt. Well, Slade's voice grated through the quiet. Look what the apocalypse dragged in. The circus animal was ready to perform, and he came all the way to Central City for the final show. So, that'll be the end of this episode. Let me know what you guys think. Like I said, man, this animation to me is dope. It might be my Goku. It might be my Goku and DC animation for moving forward. Especially, let me look at this. This is fire. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Once again, we get 10 members, man. I'm gonna try to add some voice lines, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace. Also, I already have the fight written. This Beast Boy and Slade fight is gonna be dope. So can't wait for y'all to see that. But that'll be a couple episodes after this. Anyways, I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.